Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Bobby Hams here with my review of Showtime's final season of Homeland, episode 10. We begin with Carrie meeting up with her truck driver contact from the premiere. After drugging her, Gromov dropped her off in a Pakistani town. She makes sure to write down some key words she heard from the flight recorder before she forgets them, and then asks to be taken to Bagram airfield. We then move to the White House, where President Easy is making demands of Pakistan's ambassador to the US. Zabel, still stoking the flames of conflict, suggests to the ambassador that the Pakistani army spend its time searching the 100,000 square kilometers of the Khyber Pass for Jalal rather than move missile launchers to the border. The ambassador makes it clear to Zabel and Easy that if any US soldier crosses the border, Pakistan will defend itself with everything at its disposal. David tries to smooth things over. Neither of them want war, and David asks that the ambassador help calm tensions by releasing the captured special ops team. The ambassador asks why the team was in the country to begin with, yet he agrees. At the Taliban stronghold, Jalal asks his father's former lieutenant to advise him, and is told to keep doing what he's been doing, gather men and weapons, and stay out of sight. Because Jalal has people believing he shot down the presidents, there are 20,000 more US troops in Afghanistan. 20,000 more targets, Jalal says in return. Jalal then accuses him of being a coward before the lieutenant says that he was fighting the Americans when Jalal was still sucking at his mother's tit in Quetta. He isn't afraid, but he's not stupid. Jalal commands him to find him a target, an American target. Using the truck driver, Carrie sneaks onto Bagram airfield and speaks with the chief mechanic who switched the president's helicopter at the last minute. She shows him the keywords she remembered, and he confirms that there was metal in the engine oil where there shouldn't have been. It seemed to be a controlled descent, but the pilots couldn't find a place to land. Carrie asks why they didn't radio an emergency, and he says that the order of operations is aviate, navigate, communicate. They never made it past step 1. He blames himself for putting the presidents on that helicopter. Carrie updates Saul on what she learned and tells him that Gromov stole the recorder, so she can't return to DC with it. Saul tells her after running around with Gromov all this time, she has zero credibility, so her word without the hard evidence won't be worth anything. She tells Saul to ask the Russians what they want in order to get it back. At the CIA station, Mike is made aware that Carrie snuck onto Bagram airfield. He wants her back in custody to answer some questions, like how the special ops team wound up in a Pakistani jail. He tells Jenna to gather a team, and she's shaken at her role in the team's capture. Saul meets with Russian Ambassador Makarov and fills him in on where things have reached with Gromov and Carrie, as well as the real reason the helicopters went down. Saul asks Makarov to find out what it will cost to get the black box returned. Makarov leaves without a word. Carrie goes back to Gromov's old hotel, but there isn't a trace that anyone was ever there. Carrie doesn't know what to do next. She muses that it was only a few days ago she thought she'd won. Saul hears back from Makarov and at first is told Moscow has no knowledge of any flight recorder. But he presses further and tells Makarov that a nuclear conflict with Pakistan is unacceptable and will draw Russia into it. So, what was Moscow's exact words? Makarov chillingly replies, "We have what we want," and hangs up. Saul is extremely alarmed. While waiting for traffic to move, Carrie is dragged out of the truck and is given an audience with Gromov, who apologizes for what he did. It wasn't anything personal. Carrie demands he return the black box, to which he says there's no price for Saul, but there may be one for Carrie. Gromov wants her to give him the identity of a supposed American agent who's been working with Saul from the highest level of Russian government for decades. Carrie says such a person doesn't exist, and if they did, she can't betray Saul. Gromov shoots back that, from what he's seen, she can do anything. Back at the Taliban base, Jalal is training children to fire guns when the lieutenant returns and tells him he's found an American target at the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. The lieutenant says he'll need some men to set an IED, to which Jalal asks, why not use a driver? And the lieutenant says, why sacrifice one of their own? To which Jalal says, to make a statement that the Taliban are not afraid of dying. He tells the lieutenant to go prepare the vehicle. Jalal will find a driver. The lieutenant says again that attacking the Americans will only bring endless war, and Jalal replies that his father gave up the fight because he had a scared little voice in his ear. Outside the CIA station, Carrie speaks to Saul and tells him she's about to turn herself in. Makarov was no help with retrieving the black box. How can there be a price for something they don't have? Saul knows they have it and can't figure out why they're keeping it. At his wit's end and through soft sobs, he asks Carrie to think hard. Maybe Gromov said something, anything, that they can follow up on. Carrie tells Saul that Gromov told her nothing. he stole the black box and stuck a needle in her neck. Then she adds that she found the truth. Saul, tears in his eyes, repeats a variation of something he told Carrie before she ran off with Yevgeny. The truth doesn't matter if no one will listen. Carrie seems tortured about her choices. The truck driver implores her not to turn herself in. He can hide her away in Dubai, but she decides against that and thanks him for being a friend. She then surrenders herself to the CIA. Mike finds out from the State Department that as a goodwill gesture, the Special Ops team will be released from jail and bussed to the border. Jenna requests to be there for the handover, and Mike approves when they all learn of Carrie's arrival at the front gate. Carrie is taken directly to an interrogation room as station personnel watch on in silence. Back among the Taliban, the lieutenant oversees the construction of the vehicle IED and finds his son sitting in the camp, which enrages him. Jalal tells him the children were brought to make sure he obeys orders. Jalal doesn't like how he questions his authority in front of the other soldiers. The lieutenant will drive the car or he'll watch his family die before his eyes. But, Jalal says, as a martyr, his family will be untouchable and get taken care of. The lieutenant makes Jalal give his word in front of witnesses, then stares at the instrument of death he just helped create. Jenna and Carrie chat for a bit in the interrogation room, and Carrie has lied so much that Jenna doesn't believe there ever was a black box and wants to know if Carrie is going to give her up. Carrie says she won't. FBI agent Vanessa Kroll begins interviewing Carrie, but things don't go as Kroll may have planned when Carrie reminds them what she did with Gromov was no one's business because Carrie doesn't work for the CIA. She's a US citizen under protection of the National Security Advisor, Saul. Agent Kroll promptly places her under arrest, and Jenna feels as if Carrie wanted to be brought in. David speaks with Saul and informs him that Carrie's invoking Saul as her guardian. David suggests Saul put a wall between he and Carrie. When Saul tells David everything that's gone down, David states he can't take Carrie's word and asks about the black box. Saul says that officially the Russians don't have the recorder, but unofficially they're not giving it back. David tells Saul that he has to keep his distance or Saul's credibility will be gone. Saul acknowledges that very likely possibility, but says he was there when Carrie was released by the Russians. She didn't even recognize him. And he's the one who took her out of recovery before she was ready, because he needed her to do a job. He's to blame, so he won't turn his back on her. David leaves without another word. Her hands zip-tied together, Carrie is walked out of the CIA station and taken to a private jet. Meanwhile, at the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, Jenna awaits the arrival of the freed Special Ops team. Concurrently, Haqqani's former lieutenant parks the car near its target and sends a solemn message to his wife. He isn't afraid to die, but it's hard for him not to hold her and his sons one more time. He asks her for her forgiveness. He then instructs her to keep the message as a way to make sure Jalal doesn't go back on his word. Just then, a Pakistani army vehicle drives past him. The bus carrying the Special Ops team pulls up to the barriers, and some Pakistani soldiers leave the Americans locked inside, as the Pakistanis take care of paperwork. While that's happening, Haqqani's former lieutenant steals his nerves and speeds towards the border gate. US and Pakistani soldiers open fire as he heads straight for the unprotected bus. The episode ends with Carrie's plane taking flight on its way back to the US. She's oblivious of the cataclysmic event that just took place on the ground. If I had to describe Homeland Season 8, Episode 10 in one word, I'd say it was chilling. Because of the real-world people, warhawks they're called, who push for war all the time, when a misunderstanding can be worked out with patience and diplomacy. Some of the more high-profile and infamous U.S. warhawks include Henry Kissinger for helping drag the U.S. into Vietnam, Donald Rumsfeld for his part in starting the war in Iraq, and John Bolton, who really wanted to bomb Iran and North Korea. Like Zabel, these guys all think wars are a piece of cake that can be won over a weekend. Then it's back to work on Monday, the rest will figure itself out. Ever since the helicopters went down, I've been wondering what the trigger would be that sets off the fireworks, and we got that answer in no uncertain terms in this episode. I think both sides will rightfully blame the Taliban, but President Easy will listen to Zabel, not David or Saul, and try to send troops across the border to hunt down Jalal. Pakistan won't let them through, and I don't know if a ground war will begin or if fighter jets will be scrambled or what. I am confident, however, that cooler heads will not prevail, not as long as Jalal, Zabel, and Easy are in the mix. I also wonder if there really is an American agent in the Kremlin, or if it's some kind of ultimate test for Carrie to see if she's willing to betray her last remaining ally. I mean, Saul is literally the one and only person in the US who still believes anything she says. Like I mentioned, she did look a little bit tortured after her final call with Saul, but we'll see if she goes through with it and find out if the chaos has finally arrived on the next episode of Homeland. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Bobby Hams, signing out.